I still remember the sound of her voice that morning. Calm, distant, almost rehearsed. She said, "Mom, we're going tomorrow." Then a pause. "And then?" "I already sold the beach house, and your car. We needed the money." The words didn't echo. They just sank, like stones falling into still water. 35 years of love and sacrifice, all erased in one quiet call. I didn't shout. I didn't ask why. I just listened to the silence that came after her voice faded. Because sometimes, silence tells you more than words ever will. When the line went dead, I sat still for a long time. The clock ticked like it was waiting for something to break. But nothing did. Not then me. That morning light coming through the curtains felt different. Cold. Heavy. The kind of light that reminds you that time moves on, with or without you. I thought about Robert. He'd always said, when people show you their truth, listen quietly. That's when you'll hear your own. So, I listened. And somewhere deep inside that silence, a thought began to grow. My daughter thought she had taken everything from me. But she had no idea what I still held close. Because before Robert died, he left me something, a secret he told me to open only when I truly needed to remember who I was. And now, I think that time had come. The doctor's office that day had smelled like antiseptic and worry. The nurse had told me my blood pressure was high. I smiled, said I'd rest. But rest wasn't in my plans anymore. Outside, the wind was restless. I walked slowly, letting the air clear my thoughts. Every step home felt heavier than the last, not from age, but from understanding. People around me looked busy, alive, unaware. And for a brief moment, I envied them, the ones who still believed their lives would always make Southeast. NSE. At the bus stop, a little boy tugged on his mother's sleeve. He was laughing, holding an ice cream that was melting faster than he could eat it. And for a second, I saw Angela, not the woman she'd become, but the little girl who used to run to me when she spilled her juice. The same eyes, the same spirit. When did she stop looking at me with love and start looking at me with calculation? Maybe I was too busy surviving to notice the shift. Maybe she'd been silently drifting away long before Robert passed. By the time the bus arrived, I'd stopped asking why. Grief teaches you that not every answer deserves to be found. As the city blurred past my window, I thought of Robert again, the day he'd pressed that manila envelope into my hands. He'd said quietly, "Open this when you forget how strong you are." I smiled then, thinking it was just one of his tender gestures. But now, sitting on that bus with everything gone, I finally understood. It wasn't a gift. It was a lifeline. And tonight, I was going to open it. The rain began just as I reached home. Not a loud storm, just soft drops, tapping on the roof like a reminder to breathe. The house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't comfort, it accuses. I took off my shoes, boiled water for tea, and carried the cup to our bedroom. The envelope was in the top drawer, where Robert had kept his watch, his pen, and that photograph from our wedding, the one where he was laughing instead of posing. The edges of the envelope had yellowed. I traced his handwriting with my thumb before opening it. Inside were papers, property deeds, certificates, but beneath them, a folded letter. It was written in his neat, patient script. My dear Antonia, if you are reading this, it means I'm gone. And if I'm gone, it means you've been strong enough to stay. He wrote that we were never poor, only private. That over the years, he'd saved, invested, and quietly built something solid. Not for pride, but for peace. He wrote that everything we owned, the land, the savings, even the shares, were in my name. And that he'd kept it from Angela, not out of distrust, but to protect her heart fro. Greed. I sat there for a long time, the paper trembling in my hands. All the years of worry, of scraping by, of guilt over every bill I paid late. All the nights I cried alone thinking I'd failed him. It was all unnecessary. Robert had seen further than I did. He'd built safety around me like a wall, and trusted me to find the door when I needed to. I smiled through my tears. Not for the money, but because even after death, he still believed in me. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The air was cool, the kind that carries the scent of change. I brewed coffee, strong and bitter, just how Robert liked it, and sat at the kitchen table staring at his letter. For the first time in months, my thoughts weren't filled with sorrow. They were filled with purpose. Angela thought she'd taken control. But all she had done was remind me of what I'd forgotten, that I was never we. By mid-morning, I had called Mr. Peterson, Robert's old lawyer. His voice hadn't changed. Still steady, still kind. When I told him about the letter, he asked me to come in. The walk to his office felt symbolic somehow, each step like reclaiming a part of myself. His office smelled of old paper and dusted memories. He read the documents slowly, his glasses sliding down his nose, until finally he looked up and smiled. "Mrs. Brooks, these are legitimate. Everything your husband owned is legally yours." That sentence landed softly but firmly, like a door closing behind me. I thanked him, folded the papers back into my purse, and stood. As I reached the door, he said something I'll never forget. "You always had a quiet strength, Antonia. Some people mistake that for weakness." I didn't reply. Sometimes silence is the only thank you that feels right. When I stepped outside, the wind picked up, carrying away a loose paper that fluttered down the street. And I thought, maybe that's what I was doing too. Letting go of what didn't belong anymore. When I got home, I sat in the same chair where Robert used to read his newspaper. The morning light had shifted, turning gold through the curtains. For the first time in a long while, it didn't feel cold. I spread the documents across the table like puzzle pieces, matching signatures, names, and dates. It felt like mapping the history of our lives, every sacrifice, every quiet victory. Angela had sold the beach house illegally. That realization didn't bring anger. It brought clarity. I wrote in my notebook. Step 1, find the truth before anger finds me. And underneath it. Step 2, reclaim what's already mine. I smiled. Robert used to say that when life tries to shrink you, that's when you stand taller, even if no one is watching. As the sun began to set, I opened the window. The scent of the ocean drifted through, soft and familiar. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about money or property anymore. It was about remembering who I was before life made me small. I whispered quietly to myself, not out of defiance, but out of peace. "We're going tomorrow, Mom," she'd said. Yes, I thought. We are. But not the way she planned. I reached the beach house 2 weeks later. The sea air met me like an old friend, salt, sand, and something softer I couldn't name. It looked smaller than I remembered, but time has a way of shrinking even the things that once held our entire world. The porch boards creaked under my shoes. Every sound carried memory. the laughter of summers long gone seemed to hide in the wind. Inside, dust shimmered in the light, floating like ghosts that didn't want to leave. I touched the walls, tracing the outlines where photographs had hung. Each mark was a story, each empty nail, a chapter closed. In the bedroom, beneath the old dresser, I found a small chest wrapped in a faded scarf. Inside were seashells, letters tied with ribbon, and a tiny velvet pouch. I opened it slowly. A gold locket, engraved with Robert's initials. It felt warm, as if it had been waiting for my hands all this time. When I turned it over, I noticed a folded note tucked behind the pictures. But I didn't open it, not yet. Some truths need quiet before they can speak. I sat on the bed and whispered, "We're home, Robert." And the house, in its silence, almost seemed to answer. It was morning when I heard the tires on the gravel drive. A familiar engine, one I used to recognize by heart. Angela stepped out of the car, wearing that same determined expression, part pride, part fear. I stood in the doorway, hands folded, heart steady. She looked surprised to see me there. I could tell by her posture that she hadn't come for forgiveness, at least not yet. She started talking quickly, about confusion, about not knowing the papers were real, about believing she had to act fast. But I didn't interrupt. People reveal their truth when you let them run out of excuse. When her words finally fell quiet, I simply said, "You're here now. That's what matters." The silence that followed was heavier than anger could ever be. We sat at the old kitchen table, the same one where she used to draw with crayons while Robert read the paper. The table still carried the faint scratches of her childhood. For a long time, neither of us spoke. And in that stillness, I realized something simple. Love doesn't always heal loudly, sometimes it waits, patient, like a tide returning to shore. That evening, when the sun slipped low over the ocean, I took out the locket again. Angela was asleep on the couch, her breathing deep and childlike. I opened the tiny folded note inside. Robert's handwriting greeted me, firm, steady, like his voice had never left. My dearest Antonia. If life ever feels too heavy, remember this: we built more than a house. We built faith. If our daughter loses her way, don't chase her with anger. Wait with grace. She will find you again. I held the paper to my heart and let the words sink in. Robert had known everything, even this moment. His love had been a compass pointing home long after he was gone. I closed the locket, stood by the window, and watched the sky fade from gold to violet. Somewhere beyond those clouds, I imagined Robert smiling. And I whispered, "She's home, love. She found her way." The next morning, the house smelled of coffee and forgiveness. Angela was quiet, her eyes softer, her shoulders lighter. We talked, not about money, not about mistakes, but about memories. About the nights Robert would sing off-key, about the sandcastles that never survived the tide, about the way time had both broken and bound us. For the first time in years, I laughed. A real laugh, the kind that starts in your chest and surprises your throat. Angela looked at me and said she wished she could take it all back. I told her we don't take things back, we learn how to carry them differently. The truth is, forgiveness isn't something you give once, it's something you keep choosing. Day after day. Even when the hurt feels fresher than yesterday. We spent the rest of the day cleaning the house together. Every drawer we opened seemed to breathe again. Every photograph we dusted became lighter, like memory forgiving itself. When we stepped outside, the sun touched her face. For a moment, she looked like that little girl again, running through the waves, fearless, free. And I thought, maybe that's what healing really is. Remembering joy without pretending pain never existed. That evening, I sat on the porch, watching the sea fold into itself. The world felt calm, not perfect, not fixed, just quietly at peace. Robert had once told me that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it whispers through the choices we make when no one's watching. And I finally understood what he meant. Life had taken much youth, time, certainty, but it had given back something deeper. Grace. The kind that doesn't need applause. Angela came and sat beside me. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The waves did the talking, soft, endless, forgiving. I thought about the years behind me, the love, the betrayal, the quiet return. And in that thought, I found peace. I whispered into the wind, no one can take what's truly yours, your dignity, your wisdom, your peace. And the sea, in its endless rhythm, seemed to whisper back, yes, you've always known. Sometimes life doesn't give us the ending we want. But it always gives us the truth we need. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's remembering that we are all still learning how to love. Until next time, my dears. Take care of your hearts. And remember, even silence can be a kind of strength.